Hi, thanks for tuning in to our Practical Nerds weekly podcast. I'm Shub, and together with my partner and co host Patrick, we normally invest in founders in design, construction, renovation, and logistics technology. Many of our friends in the ecosystem wanted us to start a podcast on the built world, and in return, we decided to honor their request with a show about nothing at all.
Hey Patrick, we're back after quite a while. I mean, in the intro, I promised our audience a weekly podcast. I think some of them might be saying, "Hey, these guys have been denying us their promise for a fair while now."
3 weeks.
I think it might be even more than that because I recall, with the last episode we did or the most recent one, you and I were both. I think you were quite literally in transit, and we were both sort of bracing for some travel ahead.
Yeah, I'm taking the time between when we're recording this and when we release the previous one. That's 3
I
weeks.
see. I
Yeah.
see. That's right. Well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah. To always massage the message, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
what this industry teaches us.
I mean, look,
But
we're VCs. Yeah.
you, so there's been a great reason and one that we want to share about today, and share primary information, direct impressions to our audience that, first of all, to each other, actually, because you and I were using this to debrief each other and let
Yes.
people who are interested participate. You've been behind the Great Firewall, Shub. What brought
Yeah.
you to China?
Oh, yeah. So firstly, I think it was great to head back to China after quite a few years. My second trip overall, I think the first was tremendous, the second one as well. So this time, the idea was, to visit like a large robotics event specifically. Uh, Now, quite interestingly, a recent episode you and I did was on events and how we choose to only go to events where we get a very good return on it. I think this was one of those events where I would say we got a very good return off of it. There was uh, some clear goals we had set out for ourselves, and I think we achieved them. So it was for a robotics event, and I would say first big takeaway, a high level headline if you're looking for it is if you're thinking robotics, you cannot think beyond China, or you should not leave out China from your analysis.
So you're prompting it perfectly. So the first headline that we want to talk to about today, and the first of, let's say, just counting here, 6 big takeaways. The first big takeaway and insight that you brought home was, shouldn't surprise anyone, but it does. China is its own mind-boggling scale when it
Yeah,
comes to robotics and automation systems. In fact, the event you attended, I wouldn't even call that an event. That was a trade fair, an
yeah,
exhibition, one of the largest of its kind in the country, but not the only one of that size. And that was all about automation systems, the system integrators of these automation systems, the robotics OEMs, all across the spectrum. So should paint a picture for me here. What
yeah.
do I have to visualize in my brain?
Yeah. So first thing to keep in mind. So this event was organized in an exhibition venue, which is one of the largest in the world. Now the
Shanghai.
in Shanghai, exactly. Now the event, the venue themselves claim it's the largest indoor exhibition complex in the world. But depending on how you define it, it may either indeed be the largest or at least one of the top three. So at least we're already talking about a venue which is gigantic. So it adds up to
Wow.
about 500,000 square meters of exhibition area alone, right? Not including other supporting infrastructure, etc.
Okay.
So that's about 500,000 square meters split over about 18 halls.
18.
18 halls. Each, think of it like each 18 halls in the Western world, quite often, each of those halls would be sufficient to do an event of its own. So these are pretty large things where, and each of those is filled with exhibitors having their booths, and obviously people, prospective clients, other parties interested, walking up to them, talking to them, and so on.
So I just did the I'm very good at math. So I did the math right now, Shub. So 500,000 square meters, that's for the non-American friends among the audience, 70 soccer fields.
Okay.
For my American friends who have a passion for the same sport that I have, which is the American kind of football, 90 football fields, 90.
Wow. That
I
okay,
mean,
that really puts it into perspective, right?
and
A
sorry,
lot
oftentimes these exhibition centers, etc., they would be that large, but they would use a subset of that for the conference. That's not what you're saying. You are saying
Oh,
all of that was used for this conference.
that's right. Yeah. So just to clarify, I didn't visit all of them because not all of them were directly related to the purpose of our visit, but the trade show itself covered all of it. So
Wow.
that's just how big of a topic automation and robotics is in China and or for China, right? That's the scale we're talking about. That's the relevance where you fill up uh, a venue of that size for an event like this.
Wow. So I'm just I just queried. So London City Airport would be the same size, according to ChatGPT.
I see. Interesting.
So
But
quite big, yeah.
that includes the runway infrastructure, etc., as well.
All of it
Oh
includes the
wow.
runway, the
Okay.
whole perimeter, all of the fencing.
Yeah, that's okay. When you put it like that, it's quite mind-boggling. Interesting,
That's large.
right?
I have
Now,
fact checked ChatGPT here, but that's what it says.
oh look, if it's ChatGPT, it's got to be legit, man. Yeah, it's got to be
I
legit.
mean, it always tells you how great you are, right? So
I know.
smart question.
Not only is it accurate, it's then immediately after that it becomes a historical fact, historically accurate fact.
That is such a smart observation, Shub.
Yes, thank you. I can see, we have already made a spectacular comeback on Practical Nerds.
I think this is the part where 50% of the audience drops.
Yes.
Nice. So back to the.
Normally it happens 5 minutes earlier.
So back to the picture. What else do I have to visualize?
Yes. So now, so firstly, we have these 18 different halls making up this event. Now imagine across the 18 halls, it's also very dense. So imagine there's lots of booths, some very large, some smaller. So the larger the company, the more higher profile, it'll be more center stage, so to speak, and be larger as a booth. But each booth is also full of interested parties. So there's like constant flurry of people. It's a very dense event in terms of footfall, people going in and out, people constantly inquiring, etc. And therefore, at each booth, you also need a lot of people or personnel to handle all the parties who are walking in and making inquiries and so on. So overall, it's
Wait,
like
no robots for that?
for taking inquiries.
Yeah. I mean, humanoids are actually fairly. So that's actually, believe it or not, Shub, that's the most straightforward and most advanced application already today for humanoids is
see.
actual receptionist and work
Okay.
of basically greeting people. Did you see that?
No, so we did see a few humanoids who were just there to sort of greet people, but not take inquiries. They were not doing that in this case.
I'm certain it actually happened in the other halls then, because
I
I know
see.
you were mostly around the industrial part of the exhibition.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, but so okay, so interesting prompt. Also, we saw quite a few humanoids. Um, so imagine all this space also very dense with people, right? To the
Wow.
point where there's always or not always, but most of the times there's always a constraint in terms of how you can quickly get in and actually talk to someone. There's some bottleneck usually because some person who knows certain aspect of what you want to talk to them about is maybe held up talking to someone else, etc.
I just want to point it out for the imaginary documentary narrator in my head who comments on your and my life and who sees us talking about this. That's coming from an Indian, someone
Yes.
that grew up in India. So you are saying this was densely packed.
Yes, it was quite densely packed.
Wow.
Now, this is not to say that India doesn't get densely packed, but I cannot imagine, and again, no disrespect to anyone, but an event organized about robotics and auto. I mean, it would have to be a completely different kind of event to get packed to this density in India. It was very, very dense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a
Yeah.
benchmark.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think so. I guess just to unpack it, I think that's maybe a point from a more from a symbolism perspective, and we'll get into more observations as we go along. It kind of shows how meaningful and important and large the theme of robotics and automation is in China, where it merits taking up that large a venue for different exhibitors and themes, and there's that many people coming in to
Hmm.
talk about these exhibitors. So it is one of the seems like an extremely important theme with a lot of interest and a lot of clearly demand, including commercial demand, going into this theme in China.
Clear. I have a visual here. One of the pictures you sent me. Sorry, I have to share this one just because it's fun.
Uh-huh.
So it's one of many pictures that you shared. I'm picking the one that is perhaps the most. Oh, what happened here? So the lady in the middle, that's a
Yes,
humanoid, and she has a very disturbed look. What did you do?
I guess what happens in Shanghai stays in Shanghai.
Did the manufacturer of this robot, did they provide any applications? I mean, it's sort of, I would say it's humanoid, just with, okay, I'm gonna add even the whole human look to it.
Yeah. So actually, interestingly, when my colleague Fabio and I we were wanted to take this photo, the manufacturer actually requested us to wait a little bit so that they'll program the expression to be more human-like, which is when we could
Mm,
attempt another photo. Now,
mm.
unfortunately, we were in a bit of a hurry. We needed to get elsewhere, so we were like, okay, we don't mind so much. But so apparently, so this humanoid, so what we saw her do was sort of greet people. Unfortunately, we couldn't understand what she was saying because it was all in Chinese. But it was more like a greeting humanoid, kind of alluding to what you were saying. And I
Got
think
it.
at some point when and by the way, there was a queue to take photos with the humanoid. So by the time we got our chance to take the photo, I think there's something off with the expression, as you rightly pointed out. But we didn't have time for the manufacturer to fix the expression.
Yeah, she looks disturbed to see you.
Maybe she just had a long day, dude. She was just
That's
burnt out.
possible. Or yeah, well, okay. Uh, so, in other words, Shub, about this first point that you're sharing,
Hmm.
it's a complete different scale. It's a mind-boggling scale, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, yeah. So therefore, I think for anyone looking at robotics, I think to leave out China from the scope, I would say is a big mistake because you're leaving out a very substantial portion of the market which is responsible for robotics in the world, and potentially the leading technology going into robotics.
Look, I think it's consistent with what's happening in terms of actual installations, right? So in China, they installed 10 times more robots than the major Western markets together installed in 2024. So I think, your impressions from on the ground certainly seem to confirm that consumption in China of automation systems, robotics units, etc., it's on its own scale. So honestly, I think here's one thing. If we want to play in by we I mean anyone,
Mhm.
not nations, not companies, whatever. Just if anyone wants to play in the robotics arena, you actually have to gain primary information from that market. I think that's an
Yeah,
important insight.
absolutely.
Very important theme for China, clearly.
Yeah.
Okay, you left a second message with
Yes.
me, which has to do with the capital provision
Hmm.
and the impact of why that allows China to build capacity in industries that are very important
Yes.
to it,
Yes.
including the robotics industry. Tell me about that insight with regard to the financing stack.
Yeah. Pretty much every robotics manufacturer we spoke with, and this is especially true of Chinese robotics OEMs, spoke of access to debt, access to government subsidies, access to tax credits for any exports they do out of China, to the point where, for various things we were discussing with them that came up in our conversations with them. And the reason I found that interesting is you don't often hear, firstly, such uniformity in responses in terms of what comes up as a key point. And I think in the Western world, we certainly don't see robotics companies mention getting cheap debt, subsidies, tax credits, and whatnot. And I think this all, at least to me, suggests like a very systematic, unified national plan, I suppose, for lack of a better expression, to
Mm-hmm.
build up capacity and build up some sort of either sovereignty or leadership when it comes to robotics and manufacturing capacity, which I think for anyone out there thinking along these lines, you need to be aware that that is the nature of the game. That is the nature of the unfair advantage that Chinese robotics companies come with,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which obviously gives them a. I was about to say an edge in providing robotics, but clearly it's much more than an edge. It's a enormous unfair advantage. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So I just want to raise my hand on this one because I'm going to take a quick detour with you. Just one thought that I've been having for a while, and I'm going to bring it back into the robotic arena. So the reason why I don't want to buy Nvidia at this share price is not because it's overvalued. If you look at actually at the fundamentals of Nvidia, it's I think there can be made arguments that it's still undervalued. Actually, the amount of cash flow, the amount of profit that Nvidia generates, I don't think that's an inflated asset by the norms that many other inflated assets would deserve out there. My personal opinion, not financial advice. But the reason why I bring Nvidia in there is because the GPU arena. Now, oftentimes when you would own Nvidia or the founder, an investor, an employee, etc., you would say, hey, look, I mean, we make the most sophisticated chips on earth. We figured out manufacturing. And we're going to have the best R&D out there. That will translate into you being the cutting edge of the next generation of energetic efficiency of GPUs, how many computations you can do on a small space, etc. But what if, let's say, you can be, I'm putting out a random arithmetic number. Let's say you can improve the effectiveness and efficiency of your core GPU by 2x because you had the best R&D, the best design, and the best manufacturing. And you're saying, hey, someone else, for example, a Chinese manufacturer that has a ton of cheap debt and access to a great talent pool, they cannot match my effectiveness and efficiency.
Yeah.
And definitely not by 2x. Maybe they're only as good as the model that I just replaced. So 1x, not 2x.
Yeah.
But they produce for 33%.
Yeah.
Now tell me, what is going to happen to my company if I improve on the basis of my IP and manufacturing prowess by 100%, but I get undercut on the model that is half as efficient by 66%. What do you think happens at that point? I can tell you this played out in solar.
Yeah.
This played exactly out in solar because the Western OEMs had the superior designs, they had the superior technology. Just Google thin film solar if you don't believe me. They had the manufacturing automation for these, and they lost the solar game in terms of manufacturing. Not because they weren't cutting edge technology, but because they were. But they weren't production cost and per unit cost that were proportionately good enough by how much they were undercut. And it would not surprise me if a country like China, or let's say the manufacturers in a country like China, could figure some similar move out for the GPUs of the future. And then you have to ask yourself the question, like I do I want to own that stock? And
Hmm.
so for me, the answer has been no, because I cannot predict whether that might actually happen. But I think there is a real chance that it might play out that way. And now to
Hmm.
bring that back into the robotics arena, do you really want to compete on that level then with, okay, I'm going to always have the most cutting edge robotics when perhaps the previous cutting edge is good enough, but it's so much cheaper than your cutting edge? That's,
Yeah.
a thought I
Yeah.
was wanting to share with you.
I mean, look, I can tell you, at least based on what we've gathered on a primary basis, it would be very hard to make the case against Chinese firms one-upping you definitely on pricing and cost. But as we'll touch later through one of our points, because so it's resulting in other advantages as well, because they have this advantage of building up manufacturing capacity and they come with a cost advantage. We are also seeing signs that they're accumulating like a track record advantage with lots and lots of traction
Mm,
in a capital efficient way, and
mm,
therefore they're doing reps over their competition, if you
mm.
know what I mean. While the competition is taking needs certain amount of capital to be invested and then certain amount of time to build up a certain track
The
record.
reps point, yeah.
Yeah. So the Chinese companies are doing far more reps with the same amount of time and money,
And
right?
I think the debt point with regard to the reps is more important for another reason. So in the West, we're financing our um, reindustrialization leaders, our new age industrialization startups with venture money.
Yeah.
Shub, in China, the venture market has been pretty bad for
Yeah.
the last 5 to 6 years. So the fact that you're sharing the observation, hey, they loaded with cheap debt, is remarkable for that reason too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you want to build factories in the West, I mean, come on, nobody should use their equity money to do factory two with that. You need to go into project finance. So if you now create an industry or an ecosystem where actually the access to the type of debt that could be equivalent to project finance or is a project finance to actually build out your capacity for production, if you make that extremely smooth and simple, that's the real way to industrializing.
I mean, perhaps some of the 4 trillion extra allocation that Germany has laid out, which we spoke of a few episodes ago, perhaps it should go towards initiatives like this.
Yeah. Um, it does, but in a different way. So it does because Germany is committed now to creating a stable and predictable pipeline of demand. And so in the end, I mean, Shub, you and I are always joking, right? The best source of cash is your customer, and the second best source of cash is your bank. And
Yeah.
then come you and me.
Yes.
I mean, I'm on the record. It's just true, right?
Yeah.
Not because VC doesn't have a place. It does, but you want to graduate towards the best source of cash.
Yeah.
So, and that's why VC is there, to actually help you graduate towards the best source of cash. And so Germany is taking a very similar approach there, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps consciously. It's making customer cash more programmatically available, the same way that, for example, if you wanted to sell into the Department of Energy, DARPA, DNI community in the United States, you have access to these kinds of very programmatic cash pools from a customer perspective. So that's what Germany is doing. I think China is solving it more directly through the debt angle for the technology industries that it deems core. That's something we could add here too.
Hmm.
That being said, debt is not that expensive. There's
Mm-hmm.
enough money in the market. It doesn't get distributed and originated very efficiently. I think that's an asset management problem. And secondly, we're in the project economy, Shub. Debt always likes the repeatable business. It always likes the big checks. It likes the repeatable stuff. It likes the blue chips. Is that what China is doing differently?
So it seems to me, look, I think directionally it's the same thing. So as in, the more blue chip you are, the more track record you have, the more cheap debt you will get. So I think directionally it's not different, but I would say, okay, I was about to say something. It's an odd oxymoron to use in this context, but I'll go with it nevertheless. It's actually more democratized in terms of access to capital. So in the sense, it's not necessarily who you are, but where you play. So if you play in the right field, which is by the way another tenet you and I like to follow, but if you play in the right field, you will get access to debt. That's the philosophy.
Interesting.
They will take a bet on you with access to debt if where you're playing is deemed to be an area of strategic importance.
I mean, to be fair here to the West, in the AI arena, we are seeing now a very, very deep consolidation of capital into a small number of potential AI winners. And
Mhm.
so, Shub, I have been on the record since early 2023. If you don't believe me, go back into the history of the show and my posts. The way to win it is through the fixed cost. The money goes upstream to whoever has the installed capacity. That's where the AI money is being siphoned away. And that is the capex part, the gross fixed capital formation part of
Mhm.
this economy. That's the project part of this economy, too, by the way. And so the West is concentrating hundreds of billions in that too. And I think that if you believe in AI, if you believe in that this should be done, then actually you can be very optimistic about the West doing something similar. Now, it's not doing it for the small people. It's
Yeah.
not doing it for the challengers, for the let's say ambitious small ones in the same scale, perhaps that you have been experiencing in China.
Yeah, I'd say it feels to me like there's also cheap debt available in its own quantity. I'm not saying it's available in equal quantities, but in a certain quantity, also to the long tail of manufacturers, long tail of robotics companies, and other such firms.
Yeah. Good. So this was the second subject, cheap
Hmm.
capital available for Chinese manufacturers to build out capacity and industrialization,
Yeah,
essentially. So let's come to the third. You shared with me primary information about cost asymmetry. So cost asymmetry between what the same product costs when you buy it there and the same product once it is here.
yeah.
What is that cost asymmetry?
Yeah, so actually, all these things that you've discussed, it dovetails right into it. So what hap- so and just to give you an idea, this is all primary information. We would often ask the exhibitors, okay, what's the price of this thing? So typically, we would get answers somewhere in the range of say $10,000, 20,000, $30,000. Mind you, some of them are like gigantic robots, okay, gigantic, like used for big automotive works, etc. Even that would be just like $30,000, etc. So we would sometimes ask them, okay, is that what would this typically, because some of these or many of these firms also sell to European clients, for example. Then we ask them, okay, what the landing price for this would be in say
180.
Germany or it exactly. You're right. So, the most common range for the extent of price difference would be that in the Western markets, it would be 3 to as much as 6 times more expensive as it is in the Chinese market. And
Wow.
by the way, for those trying to figure it out, that is not explained by logistics costs or any such thing. It's just pure pricing mechanisms.
Yeah, there's no cost plus to this.
Yeah,
That's literally because you can sell it for that price
yeah.
if you find a customer that likes to work with you.
Correct. Now, look, part of that, perhaps, I don't know, part of that could also be explained uh, by the fact that in China, perhaps the unit consumption of these things is so large that even if you treat it more as a bundle pricing, as in the per unit pricing goes down because the consumption or demand for units is so large potentially, whereas in Western companies, leaving aside the very large buyers, perhaps the average buyer buys a smaller number of units. But having said that, I think we should also not kid ourselves. The truth is there is a very big difference in asymmetric pricing, and therefore I think perhaps a thing to keep in mind, if you are a new age robotics company and you're sort of comparing yourself with other prices, incumbent prices you see in your home market, perhaps you're not seeing the full version of what your true competition on the cost basis should be. You're maybe just seeing
Crazy.
like a very marked up version on the pricing.
So let's move on because I think this topic will be very intuitive for everyone, but it's crazy to hear it from the ground with primary information. I think that's
As
very,
in them saying it out loud like that,
yeah.
us not having to figure it out. Yeah.
Wow. Fourth topic that you shared with me So the arms can be, for example, 6 axis, a lot of cobots around,
Yes.
and that's one of the fastest growing categories with about 30%, 40% year over year in the category growth across the world. Cobots, that is. So, Shub, you have seen a lot of arms, variations of cobots. What did you make of that?
So I think pretty much every robotics manufacturer we went to had some version of arms. Not everyone has cobots, mind you. Cobots are a little bit more sophisticated, not necessarily in what goes into making them, but what goes into deeming them safe to work alongside humans. But the arms, everyone has arms, Patrick. Everyone offers arms, right? I think on a related point, I think also worth mentioning that Chinese robotics companies tend to think of themselves as more horizontal in nature across different tasks, scopes, industries, etc. Which is why everyone, along with many other things they do, they throw in a few different kinds of arms, etc. uh, Therefore, if you are a robotics company who also uh, thinks of providing robotic arms as a differentiation, or that the fact that you're choosing to innovate with robotics arms um, is gives you some sort of differentiation, I would definitely take a pause there and reflect, because at least to me, going through that trade fair, it felt like a commodity. It really
Yeah,
felt
I
like a
think if
yeah.
so, if someone were to pitch us and say, "Hey, by the way, I have a new type of arm, and it's an innovation," it's quite likely that it isn't.
Yeah.
It's quite likely that you will be beat by someone that perhaps you don't even have on your radar. Luckily, Shub, I looked a lot at robotics in the last 18 months,
Hmm.
and I was never pitched that. So I
Good.
was never pitched, okay, I have a super innovative arm and that's why I'm going to win. Because I
Yeah.
think the roboticists in the West, that's something that they know. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, just from the sheer scale and hearing your experience, I think it's very instructive. But there was a fifth point, and you already teased us, and that is
Yes.
that there was no application focus to it, was there?
Yeah. So look, now of course, if we talk to system integrators, it's a different story. But for
Hmm.
example, if you go to robot manufacturers, or solution providers in robotics, what I thought it was very interesting was very few of them were vertically focused or use case focused. So most of them came in with the mindset of, hey, perhaps they originally had a hero product, but most of them would always have a portfolio of products across widely different use cases. So to give you an idea, it would not be uncommon for a company where, let's say, its flagship line is large robots for an automotive uh, assembly line, to also
Hmm.
have arms to pick up beverages, right? To also maybe offer a cobot line for use in a massage parlor, right? That's
What?
the wide divergence of use cases you see,
Wow.
right?
So
And
the reason why
yeah,
we count, because I say, look, I mean, if you go into industrial automation conferences in the countries that I've been to,
hmm,
typically you would have themed spaces. You would have, okay, this is our gardening and landscaping application wall, or
hmm,
this is our earth moving
yes.
part of the booth, etc.
Mhm.
But you're saying that wasn't the case there. Everybody
No.
tried to be multi-vertical.
Yeah. So to paint a picture, right, of what, so let's say you go to say a large tier one, or maybe tier 1.5 robotics manufacturer in a place like this. So firstly, it would be like a very giant booth. The way it would be laid out is there'll be company branding everywhere, and
Hmm.
perhaps the center of the booth, and when I say center, I mean you walk in from, it's a three-dimensional booth, right? So somewhere in the center, by the way, some of these booths also have an additional level to get to, but
As always, yeah.
yes, so somewhere in the center will be like the flagship use case or the most popular use case. Along
Hmm.
the periphery, they'll keep marketing different use cases, different products along the
Okay, they do.
periphery, right? So it's like a complete three-dimensional space utilization of different products and robots and robotic components they offer. So, and it's not always, at least to me, it did not feel like there was necessarily a clear segmentation by industry or use case. It was more just perhaps more subliminal customer oriented marketing on what catches eyeballs. It felt
So
more like,
extremely product focused, not so
yeah,
much application focused.
I think that's the best way of putting it. Yes.
Interesting. I mean, that's
Yeah.
something that Western equipment manufacturers tend to do very differently. So they tend to focus, especially when it's very established manufacturers that have been around for decades. You will see them market websites, sales, conferences, trade fairs, application first, and here is the product for that. And that product, they make it look like it's super tailored, or although it uses a modular kit of parts or etc. So I thought that was a very interesting insight that you were sharing, is that it's still very product focused.
Yeah. I mean, so and when I zoom out, right? Uh, I haven't yet necessarily made a conclusion or come to a verdict on this, but it makes me believe it's sort of related to some of the earlier points we discussed. When you have access to debt, when you are so clearly focused on building up a lot of manufacturing capacity, and that is helping you achieve scale faster, perhaps they're thinking, hey, why be limited to only one or two use cases or industries? Why not just try to do whatever, right? So that's perhaps the mindset driving. And once a few companies start doing it, I guess their competition are thinking similarly. So the entire market is perhaps functioning in that manner.
I mean, I understand that, but on the other side, so there's a popular TV show that I enjoy, and in one of these, I'm not going to say which one it is. In one of these, one guy says to the other, "Hey, if the car salesperson wanted to sell this car to a monkey, he would show brochures with a monkey behind the wheel." So the point is, you can still be product oriented, but market it in an application way, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I thought that was quite interesting. But I wonder, perhaps it's actually not a universal insight. What was the conference that you attended targeting system integrators, or was it customers would go there to the conference as well to find solutions? And the reason I'm asking is, so customers will oftentimes benefit from the very strong application focus. System
Yes.
integrators are the one that actually craft applications.
Hmm. So at least to me, it felt more targeted to customers than system integrators. Also
Mm,
because system integrators themselves were also exhibiting, sometimes either independently or alongside the manufacturers, as in the manufacturers' booths, already having like a presence inside the booth of the
mm.
manufacturer. Uh, it felt to me more like a customer use case. So the best rationale I could come up with was it was sort of a product placement led marketing strategy where if there is a customer seeking some sort of robotics or automation solution, you kind of grab their mind share with whatever might be relevant and maybe try to also capture as much wallet share as you can, not just do one use case, but whatever needs they may have, try to be like a one-stop shop
Clear.
uh, solution for them.
So what I also hear you say is that conference was not targeted towards system integrators. That was like open to everyone, and you had
Correct.
all kinds of okay, yeah, no, but
Yeah.
then I think it's more general insight. Okay, cool. That brings us to perhaps the final one for today. There's more that you shared with me, but we touched upon VC funding earlier. You looked at a ton of robotics solutions, OEMs, players over there. What about the intersection of VC and Chinese robotics?
Yeah. So we met also some, let's call them new age robotics platforms, new age robotic system integrators.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think first things first. Previously on this podcast, we've described how in certain markets a lot more gets done with relatively less capital raised. So, for example, we've had such observations about marketplaces in India, for example, where
Yep.
uh, with relatively little capital raised, they get much further ahead in terms of traction, get to profitability sooner, etc. I had that sort of observation, I have to admit, Patrick, about robotics companies in China. And by that, I
Mm.
don't between OEMs, which I'm pretty sure that's also the case with robotics manufacturers, but also new age platforms which offer either software or some sort of unifying tech layer, and therefore become the new age system integrators, getting fabulous traction. So to give you an idea, one of the companies we met must have raised in total through their lifetime about the equivalent of $30 million,
Mm-hmm.
already doing upwards of 20 million in revenue, operating in multiple geographies, very stable and good revenue growth, surprisingly low burn. Think low single digit millions of dollars a year, right? Can you imagine that sort of combination happening in the West?
It would certainly be a company that I would be very interested in if it happened in the
Yeah.
West. Yeah.
So, so as in to after having raised that much money and that much scale, operating off of that small a burn on a
Mm-hmm.
robotics company, which I thought was
I'm
go
not
ahead.
surprised, to be honest. I'm really not surprised. So a couple of weeks ago, I actually bought a robotic product from a Chinese manufacturer. It's a consumer product.
Okay.
It's a company that does consumer and commercial with the same product. My product is like it's for a professional consumer, so it's a higher line,
Okay.
and it's underwater. So it's a very, very difficult.
Oh, I think I kind of know which one you're talking about. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
it's not like, okay, some floor sweeping, etc. It's like real difficult conditions, cutting edge, etc. That thing, Shub, the software is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The whole haptics, the touch, feel. Germans are from the automotive days. We're obsessed with the gaps in a
Mm-hmm.
product. There is even a measure which we use in Germany, which we call the gap width, basically, to judge
Okay.
how good the engineering on a product is. It's absolutely perfect. The materials used are excellent, and I felt like, okay, this is a premium product,
Hmm.
worthy of the price. It will have a long time. Hopefully, I'm right about that, etc. This is not shit.
Hmm.
Absolutely not. This was like terrific. And so the reason why I say that is because that company is the world leader in that product and has already sold tens of thousands of these. So
Hmm.
there's real scale there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what I wanted to say here is uh, so at various points of time, we have spoken about the need for efficiency in capital allocation. We have spoken about profitability. We have spoken about execution modes, etc. I see all of that coming together effectively when we see robotics companies in China. They're just getting way more done uh, with much less capital burnt, with much less capital raised, uh, in a more sustainable way. And I think, therefore, the likelihood that they will keep doing reps on their Western counterparts is just so much higher,
Yeah,
right? So that's definitely an area where I'd be continuing to put my be focused on. And I think anyone interested in robotics, I think for that reason should be looking at China.
great. So when are we going again?
Very soon, sir. Very soon. Maybe before we plan our next robotics episode on Practical Nerds,
Or our next episode?
or next episode. Okay, so better get ready to head out right away.
Nice. Well, look, I mean, let's. Um, I think one of let's perhaps leave it with this remark. Um, in the end, the job of the fund manager and the job of the founder is the same. It is not, let's say, hey, let's give myself a ton of constraint and let's maximize the result within these constraints. No, the job is let's make the biggest return.
Yeah,
And that's why, for example, if you're a vertical fund and you're geographically focused and you can only do a certain check size, boy, you will have very few opportunity to actually deliver a huge fund, right? And so
yeah,
it's the same logic. So for me, it's very exciting to look into new markets all the time. And now it's this one, right? And so let's keep doing it.
absolutely.
Good stuff. And I think everyone, feed off our excitement. If you're in robotics, you're doing something wrong if you don't gain your own impressions.
Yeah, I mean, And needless to say, of course, if you're building in robotics anywhere in the world, including in China or in the Western world, hit us up.
Yeah, please do. Cool. Thanks for sharing, sir.
Thank you, sir. This was fun.
Likewise. Cheers.
Cheers.